How are you doing today? So we are going to discuss about the speaking test of IELTS in this section, and I would like to start with relating my own experience of taking the speaking test. So when I took the test, I was actually very nervous. I booked the test, but I didn't get a chance to prepare with an expert, especially on my speaking. I did prepare on writing, reading, and listening sections, but then speaking was one section where I could not really afford to find a good trainer who could help me. I've tried to find some trainers, but I didn't find uh, really worth it. I thought that probably I'll need some better practice, so I really could not practice on with the help of a trainer. So I went through all the sections of speaking and I tried to understand the structure of the test, and I was going to the test center on the test day. I was feeling nervous because I never got a chance to do a mock of speaking. So I thought that the strategy that I'm going to apply is that I would mimic all the good speakers I've seen in my life. I would try to kind of emulate or copy their style of speaking using idiomatic English and how they used to speak confidently. So I just thought that I'll do this, and as such, I cannot really do much. So I would go with this strategy of speaking whatever comes in my mind, but I'll speak it in a very nice way, and I'll make sure that I maintain eye contact and use my body language very confidently. So I would act as if I'm perfect. I'm not perfect, but I would act as if I'm perfect in that particular moment, and I'll give my best and I'll enjoy the test. So I went there, I took the test. The gentleman was very kind and he made me very comfortable. Uh, I answered all the questions in a very natural and direct way, and I thought that I did reasonably well in the test. And I came back, and to my surprise, I scored 8.5 in speaking, which was the highest. I mean, I scored 9 in listening, so the second highest was in speaking. And I was really surprised because I was really nervous before the test as I had never prepared for it, and I never expected these kind of scores in speaking. What I realized from this experience was that speaking is a very natural test. I mean, you don't have to kind of prepare a lot. So if you speak intuitively and if you speak grammatically correct English, and if you do not try to impress the examiner, you would by itself score very good marks. So here we are going to do a speaking test. I would do a role play of the test the way it is. I'm looking at this test for the first time and we will do it together. All right. So the test will start with the examiner introducing himself or herself, and then it would be a collection of questions asked to you. So my name is Amitabh Bachchan, and I'm going to be your IELTS examiner today. What is your name? My name is Rajeev Gondal, and like this it will start. So let's see the questions, and I'll give the answer and we'll do a little discussion of the answers now. Now, the first section is where you're supposed to be precise. You should give your answers in around 10 to 20 seconds, and you should give very, very basic answers. I mean, do not try to elaborate too much. Okay, what job would you like to have 10 years from now? Well, thinking about the type of job after 10 years is a difficult thing. But what I speculate is that I would be working as an online trainer where I would be doing most of my classes online. The reason is that I do not like wasting my time on traveling, so I would like to be an online trainer. How useful will English be for your future and why? Well, I think English would be of great help and it would be very useful because I dream of training people across different countries. So English is the language which is spoken in many parts of the world, and I think English, the knowledge of good English would definitely be very helpful. How much traveling do you hope to do in the future? Well, I would like to do a lot of traveling, but not for work. I expect to do a lot of traveling, and I expect to see the world around along with my family and friends, because I want to explore and learn about different cultures. How do you think your life will change in the future? Well, I think with the advent of new devices and new technologies, the life is going to witness a big change in future. I think I would be doing most of my work with certain devices, with some devices that would be available at that time. Like, for example, today also I'm using a lot of new techniques, web technologies, internet, and various advanced means of communication to train people across the world. So, probably we'll have some recorded sessions or some webinars where hundreds of people can attend sessions. So, like this, the life would definitely change a great deal. So, you're supposed to be precise, you're supposed to be very, very direct and simple while speaking about the first section, and you have to take care of basics in terms of answering the question completely. Describe a book that you, so this is the second section now. You will be given this kind of card, and you're supposed to prepare on this card for 1 to 2 minutes, and then, I mean, whatever, 30 seconds, and then you're supposed to speak for 1 to 2 minutes. You can make very precise notes about each of the questions. So, like for example, here it says, describe a book that you enjoyed reading because you had to think a lot. You should say what this book was, why you decided to read it, and what reading did this book made you think about. Explain why you enjoyed reading this book. Now, the special feature of this question, or the distinguishing feature, is the book that made you think a lot. It's not just a simple book, but something which made you think a lot. So you have to tell the name of the book and why you decided to read it and what. So what this book was, let's say the name is Retire Young, Retire Rich by Robert Kiyosaki. Now this is one book I read almost 10 years back. Retire Young, Retire Rich by Robert Kiyosaki. Since the name sounds a little funny, I would talk about it. And that's interesting book. Why you decided to read it? So I used to travel for almost 2 hours and I had nothing to do, so I thought I'll pick up a book and read during my journey. What reading this book made you think about my own job? And actually I quit my job after reading the book. So I can dramatize a little bit, although I'd never quit my job after reading the book. It was later, but then this book definitely had this influence. So I don't have to be absolutely sacrosanct and honest, and I can make some story and speak about it. Why you enjoyed reading this book? Because he explained about starting your own venture, and he compared how people proceed in their life if they do a job for someone or they start their own venture. So that is why I enjoyed reading it. Okay, so let me speak about it. Uh, I love reading, and whenever I get some free time, I like to read some good books. I've got a good collection of books there with me from various authors such as Robert Kiyosaki and others. So, one good book, which I read a few years back was Retire Young, Retire Rich by Robert Kiyosaki. This was an interesting book about how one can plan early retirement and one can have his life structured in such a way that one doesn't have to work throughout his or her life. The reason I decided to read this book was that I used to have a lot of free time traveling from my home to office. It was almost 1.5 hours when I used to be there in the cab, and there were lots of traffic jams. So whenever I used to get some opportunity, I used to open the book and read it. In fact, I read a lot of books during that time, and this was one good book. It was a quite a thick book, but I completed in my during my journey. So I used to read. I used to use my time of transit in reading some good books. So this book used to make me think a lot about the choices that were there in front of me. I was working for a multinational company in its training, talent transformation department. So I was managing that department, but then I was kind of feeling stuck during that time. So this book acted as a catalyst to help me decide about leaving the job and doing something of my own in my life. So it took me almost 3 4 hours after years after that. I didn't quit the job just after reading the book, but it did influence me a great deal, and it made me confident about making my own decision to start my own business, because it is always very difficult to break out of your comfort zone and do something absolutely new. So you need some support, you need some kind of system or of some support to fall back on. So I think this book gave me that confidence that if so many people have done it, I can also do it. And that was the reason that it made me that I'm glad to have read this book, and it really made a very strong influence on me. So you are supposed to speak in a very simple way. Be honest. So if you can have some kind of story about your life which you can relate to, you can always use that. Make sure you speak in a very simple and audible way. Don't try to impress, try to express what is there in your mind in the simplest possible way. Then there would be this follow-up section where there would be some more questions. Here you can elaborate your answers. So the topic is about children and reading. What are the most popular types of children's books in your country? Well, there are small books of there are small story books with pictures in them. They could be about some uh, mythological characters such as Ram or Sita, or they could be about some cartoons like Shiva and all. So these days, children like to use those kind of books. When they grow up, they like to read small novels, the short novels. So these are the books which are very popular among children. Apart from that, there are books of cricketers. My son is 8 years old, and he loves to read about Virat Kohli. So children also like to read books about players of their favorite players. So, what are the benefits of parents reading books to their children? Well, I think it has a lot of benefits. If parents read books to their children, they get some time to spend with their children and influence them in a positive way. It is a great way to develop their own and their children's vocabulary. And reading is a very, very good habit. So, if someone incorporates daily reading as a part of his routine, I think it would have great impact on his own life. So, I think reading books to children is a great idea, and I support it. Should parents always let children choose the books they read? Uh, well, I think parents can definitely let children to choose the books they want to read. They can guide them, they can uh, give their own example and tell them what influence books had or good books had on their own self. But yes, giving them a free hand is important. Every child is unique, and every child deserves to exercise his own will and choice. So parents should guide them but should not force their own will on children. Now, one important tip here is to use the same words as they are in the question. Like, for example, should parents always let children? Now, always is the important word here. and we can use the same words that parents should not always uh, force children to read certain books. Use the same words as they are in the question, because it becomes easy to relate to the question and the answer. Okay, the next topic is about electronic books. How popular are electronic books are in your how popular are electronic books? Oh, there is no need of 2 hours. I would say, how popular are electronic books in your country? Well, electronic books are quite common in my country now with the advent of internet technologies and various devices such as laptops or mobiles. Electronic books have really gained a lot of popularity in my country, and many people like to read electronic versions because they are freely available and they can read it anytime, anywhere. Yeah, so electronic books are quite popular. What are the advantages of parents reading electronic books compared to printed books? Well, that's an interesting question. Uh, if parents read electronic books to their children, I think the advantage would be that they can read anytime. I mean, they don't have to go out and purchase a book. Like for example, in the night, if you get some time with your children and you don't have a book, it is good to open up an electronic book and read it to your child rather than looking for a paper. You can also show some pictures. So in electronic books, usually they come with some kind of animation or pictures, and there are some um, sometimes the whole thing is spoken also. So you can turn on the speaking app where the book can be read by the online application itself. So that adds a little drama to the whole exercise of reading books to children. It makes it a little more interesting, and I think that could be one advantage. Will electronic books ever completely replace printed books in the future? Well, it is hard to say, but then from my perspective, I think electronic books can never replace the printed books. Reason being, there is a certain charm of reading books, the reading the paper books, and I think the electronic books do not give that kind of fulfilling experience. And some people also say that reading electronic books is harmful for the eyes. So I think the charm of reading paper books would never go away. So you are supposed to be complete, simple, and very direct. Don't try to speak too much. Um, of course, create some opportunities to showcase your vocabulary and structures of English, but then you should refrain yourself from overdoing it. Try to speak very to the point within the boundaries of the question and try to be very direct. So this was one test, which was, I mean, a kind of simulation which I planned for this exercise. You can use the same kind of structure, and I'm sure you will all do well. Thank you so much.